Welcome back to the EnviroGold Global YouTube channel. Today we're going to be speaking with EnviroGold's Chief Geologist, Ian Hodkinson. Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background first of all, your education, your previous work history, and what brought you to working with EnviroGold?
Yeah, certainly, Dylan. I come from the UK originally, went to uni in the UK, and in the late 1970s, I managed to score myself a job overseas. It was very hard to get work in the UK. I worked in Botswana on a nickel copper operation for a little bit over 2 years, and went back to the UK after that and sharpened up my qualifications with a master's in mining and mineral exploration, and made my way out to Australia. Since then, I guess I've accumulated probably close to 45 years of experience in the mining industry across a broad range of commodities, base metals, copper, lead and zinc, also precious metals. I've spent quite a bit of time working in gold and silver operations, and also some periods of time in nickel, tin, tungsten. So EnviroGold came along at the right time, and I got quite excited about the opportunity to, I suppose, clean up some of the mess that I've seen being made over the years. And the mining industry has undoubtedly made, quite a big environmental impact in a lot of negative ways. And I was quite keen to redress the balance a bit and tidy some of that up. And yeah, it brings its own set of challenges and difficulties, but I believe it's a rewarding sort of counterpoint to most of my career.
So with your vast experience in the field here, Ian, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the mining exploration process works today and sort of how it's changed over the last 10 years?
From an exploration point of view, what we're doing is still quite similar to what the standard mining company does. We'll identify a target, and a lot of that is done remotely these days using satellite imagery. That's one of the biggest tools I've used for the last, I suppose, almost 2 years now. With the COVID restrictions, I've had to resort to looking at stuff from out in space, basically. Once we've identified some projects, it then does become very much like standard mineral exploration, working out what volume you've got, working out what grades you've got, and following on from that, basically, is this worth pursuing as an economic exercise?
And when we did speak to Dr. Mark Thorpe last, he mentioned you, Ian, as one of the key personnel involved in the evaluation process when determining whether or not a project should be added to EnviroGold's portfolio. So talk a little bit perhaps more in detail about how you separate the wheat from the chaff and how, from a geological standpoint, this evaluation process works.
I guess the first step is always it's much easier to operate in a sort of a Western type society, I suppose, where the legal system is well defined and you can work out what you can and can't do. So a lot of the work we've done to date has been in Australia, North America, Canada, and the US. But we've started to spread our wings a little bit and started to look at Mexico, which has a thriving mineral industry. That's allowed us to define, I guess, a priority list of projects, which we've then focused on. And really, it becomes an evaluation exercise, how much is there and how much metal is tied up in those tailings, from which you can basically do a primary sort of evaluation on just how much that pile of tailings is worth, or that tailings dam. And that's the big next step is to look at all the potential cost inputs to the exercise and the revenue stream, and assess whether it's worth evaluating. There's a lot of work goes into that. Really, I guess tailings obviously are the bit that the previous operator or the old guys couldn't get out. So to some extent, they are representative of the ore body that they came from in the first instance, but they're very much the difficult end of that ore body, or the difficult component of that ore body. So the previous operators extracted most of the metal from the ore body, and then dumped the remainder in the tailings dam along with all the waste. So of course we still have to deal with all the waste that was there in the first place. And the precious or the valuable bit that's left behind can be really quite tricky. It's generally the valuable component is generally quite fine grained and simply wasn't able to be extracted the first time round. And this stuff has potentially sat in a tailings dam for as much as 100 years, if not more. And the acid drainage that's developed in that tailings dam inevitably leads to some mineralogical changes in that material, which may or may not make it easier or more difficult to extract.
And what sort of minerals is the company looking to extract out of sites like Buchans or Hellyer, for example?
Yeah, both Buchans and Hellyer are what we call VMS deposits, volcanogenic massive sulfides, and they're by definition generally multi-metal. We call them polymetallic systems. The key driver and key interest for us is that they both contain significant levels of gold at economic grades still in the tailings. And along with that, there's usually a fair amount of silver present, and also the primary base metals, copper, lead, and zinc, usually associated with those. So,
And Ian, why don't you talk a little bit about the proprietary technologies and equipment that are going to be used on these sites?
Every tailings dam really has its own character and requires a different approach. The primary metallurgical process that we use will be quite similar to what the industry standard mining guys use anyway. In addition to that, we've got a couple of other methods up our sleeve, which are proprietary and either currently patented or undergoing patent work at the moment. They include specific leach exercises that we're investigating at the moment using a range of acids and other chemicals. And I guess one of the strings to our bow is that we're particularly keen on applying electro-oxidation methodology to some of these tailing streams. And not just the tailings, but also the wastewater that comes out at the end of the exercise. We believe, and it's a sort of core component of our ethos, if you like, is that we really need to clean up while we're doing this process and minimize the amount of toxic or dangerous elements that are generally tied up in these systems. So we're aiming to process tailings primarily to clean up and get the remaining metal out, but also to try and get rid of some of the less significant metals, but those that have quite a large impact on the environment. And one of the key tools we'll be using in some of our mineralogical investigations is the MLA, which is the Mineral Liberation Analyzer, which I'm happy to say is an Australian invention. That really is becoming the gold standard of mineralogical investigations these days, and the price is getting cheaper all the time. It's not cheap at the moment, but it's rapidly becoming a very useful method for just really assessing the mineral composition of the tailings that we're looking at.
And finally, what do you think's in store for the future of mining, and what role do you see EnviroGold Global playing in it?
EnviroGold's really pioneering a lot of new methodologies to get the last bits of metal out of these tailings dams. That I think that has application within the broader mining industry as well, particularly when it comes to causing less environmental damage and cleaning up previous operations. There's a huge amount of metal tied up in tailings dams, and that really, we're aiming at a sustainable society with less waste and less energy usage. I think going back to some of the things that we've effectively half processed or 3/4 processed makes a lot of sense to get that last bit of metal out and minimize environmental damage.
Special thank you to Ian Hodkinson for joining us here on the EnviroGold YouTube channel. If you'd like more information, be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, as well as checking out our website for the latest press releases.